Hello and welcome to our special Audit Committee Connect video today on cloud computing. I'm Neil Manji and I'm joined today with Michael Rogers, the Practical Futurist. We're going to have a discussion about cloud computing. Michael, when I talk to many directors, there's a lot of concern about cloud computing and concern about security. With the newness of cloud computing and everything that we're talking about, with technology changing, is there a change that we should be waiting for before we adopt the cloud, or should we go ahead and adopt the cloud now?
I think that's a complicated question, but the answer really is that the advantages of the cloud are so great that it's wise for almost every organization to begin to embrace it. That said, the cloud is not a unified monolith. There are parts that you can use and parts that you can keep your data back on premises if that's what concerns you. But overall, it's interesting. I find I have clients that 5 years ago insisted on keeping all of their customer data on premises because that was their crown jewels. And now they can't wait to get that into the cloud because they know that whoever is running the cloud, if it's a Google or a Microsoft, spends 24 hours a day worrying about security and up on the very latest security, something that their IT department at home can't really do. So I don't think there is a golden moment to wait for in terms of now it is safe. It's more a question of assessing specific risk with regard to your own data, but not letting the fear of inadequate security keep you from doing what is inevitable.
And what's best for the company. And are you seeing cloud computing change the way that companies work and the way that they go to market and maybe how they compete with each other?
It has changed those things enormously, particularly on in the technology side. I'll give you one example at the New York Times, where I worked as Futurist in residence. We could come up with a project that was analyzing, hundreds of thousands of customer records, the track that people use when they're going through our site. These are anonymized, but they're information about how people use the website. In the old days, to run a sufficiently powerful program to get the kind of data we wanted out of that, we would have actually had to buy more computers. We would have had to go to the board and say, we want to buy some more computers. What we did instead was just rent time from Amazon and ran the whole thing in the Amazon cloud. You see it in startup companies too. In the old days in Silicon Valley, you'd walk in and, they would know they were going to have to write a check for $1 million for your IT infrastructure. Now it's a little frustrating for some entrepreneurs. They say, well, can you do a year for $50,000? I mean, you're going to do it all in the cloud. Those advantages, though, the flexibility, the low cost, that is really what should be driving businesses into the cloud.
So a real difference maker from that perspective. So if we're talking about the cloud now, what emerging technology will we talk about in, let's say, 5 years from now?
That's a good question, because if we really knew that, we'd start investing right now. In many ways, I think the cloud is very, very early days. I used to tell a joke when people ask me, what's the biggest thing that the internet's going to do in the 21st century? And I would say it's all the things we promised it would do last century. So in many ways, we're catching up with the promises that we've made. But I think by 2020, the power of the cloud will be that it is truly a global phenomenon. I don't think we can fully appreciate what it will mean when, for example, every person on Earth has a mobile phone. When we have automatic language translation that's not as great as a human translator, but plenty good enough for business. It's going to open up and level the playing field globally in a way that dwarfs even what we see today.
One of the things I talk to directors a lot about is how much face time they get with the CIO. If you were a director at an audit committee or a board of a company and you got some time with the CIO, what are the 1 or 2 questions that you would ask them?
I'd want to know what their strategy is 3 years out and how what they are buying or building today fits into that strategy. One thing I found in the technology world is whatever you buy or build today, you're going to have longer than you think. Stuff just stays around. And too often, I think that in making investments, people tend to, as I would say, shoot at the duck, not ahead of the duck. So as a board member, I think besides making sure that the basics of things like security are covered, I would really want that CIO to talk about strategy 3 to 5 years out, because that is the new role of the CIO, is strategy. Much more it is, more than just simply keeping the machines running.
Right, much more than just the back office, much more strategic and helping the business.
Exactly.
Good. Well, thank you, Michael, and thank you for joining us today for our special video clip on cloud computing.